Hey, good morning. Today we're going to look at the bones from the spinal column, and we're looking at that study sheet again that we always look at. So I'm looking at the second section, bones of the spinal column. And so the first one that's on the list is actually not one of the bones of the spinal column, but it really doesn't fit in any of the other groups. This is the hyoid bone. You would find it kind of behind your mandible up against the front of your spinal column. So that's the hyoid bone. It's kind of a floating bone. And then we get into the bones of the spinal column. So the spine is made up of 24 vertebrae. Each of these bones is called a vertebra. The top 7 are called cervical vertebrae, and so they would be named cervical 1, cervical 2, cervical 3, cervical 4, cervical 5, cervical 6, cervical 7, or cervical vertebra 1 through 7. Cervical 1 and 2 also have a nickname. Cervical vertebra 1 is also known as the atlas. You see that next on your list. And cervical vertebra 2 is the axis. Then, after the first 7, we have 12 that are named thoracic vertebra. So the numbering starts again. It's thoracic vertebra 1, 2, 3, all the way through 12. So the 12th one would be right here. The bottom 5 are the lumbar. So we have lumbar vertebra 1, lumbar vertebra 2, and so on, 3, 4, 5. Inferior to the lumbar vertebrae, we have the sacrum. That's this large one here. And it is fused to the coccyx, also known as the tailbone. Okay, so those are the whole bone names. And then here's a skeleton that is not held together. I'm going to get a little bit closer to you so you can see it. So each of the vertebrae have some pieces that are similar. Each vertebra has a vertebral body. So I'm going to use the biggest one. This is lumbar 5, and it would sit in my body like this, or like this. And I'm going to use this one because it's the biggest one. So I'm going to hold it. Now you're looking at a superior view of it. This would be the front, anterior. This would be the back, posterior. So the most anterior portion kind of looks like a rounded, flat block. It's the vertebral body. So if I had a sticker on this, I would call it the vertebral body of lumbar 5. Each one has 3 processes that we're learning. At the very back, it's the spinous process. Those are the bumps that you can feel down your back. Those are the spinous processes of all your vertebrae. So this would be the spinous process of lumbar 5. Off to the sides, we have 2 processes. They're called transverse processes. The one on the right, of course this would be the right side, is the right transverse process. So we would call this right transverse process of lumbar 5. And this would be left transverse process of lumbar 5. Each vertebra also has a hole through it. And what's the word for a hole through a bone? That's right, it's a foramen. So this is the vertebral foramen of lumbar 5. Then, if we put 2 of the vertebrae together, stack them correctly, they will form a hole out the sides called an intervertebral foramen. So this would be the intervertebral foramen between lumbar 4 and 5. In other words, I would say the lumbar 4-5 intervertebral foramen. We also have other things that are between the vertebrae. If you look in this complete model, you see that we have a tissue that's not bone that's between each of the vertebrae. They are intervertebral discs, and they would be named for the ones that they're between. So say this one down here would be lumbar 4-5 intervertebral disc. That pretty much covers the vertebral column list. See you later.